Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, and today I have with me Tom Wetzel, president at Thomas Wetzel and Associates. Tom, thank you for joining me today. How's it going?
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here. The sun is shining, so it's all good.
Awesome, awesome. And for Chicago well, I guess it's already March. I was going to say February. So for Chicago in March, you're enjoying a little bit of an early spring.
Yeah, we'll probably go back to snow at some point. Well, I've seen snow in April, so but we'll
Yeah,
see.
definitely not unheard of in the Midwest. Uh, so we always give the guests the chance to give the elevator pitch. What is Thomas Wetzel and Associates?
Well, first off, I have been in the insurance industry for more decades than I care to think about. I started my career with the Insurance Information Institute, and I've been doing digital marketing uh, projects for both companies, but mostly for independent agents. In the AI and cyber crime environment that we're now living in, I do two things. One is I educate agents in a bunch of workshops that I do. Most of them are CE approved, about how AI can help them operate their agencies more efficiently, but also the cybercrime threat that comes with it. And I do that. And then the other thing is I can actually deliver to them. We do two things. One is I developed a cyber risk assessment specifically for insurance agents. We do some things that really nobody else does to try to give an agent a real deep dive on understanding what their risks are, both directly through their agency, but also through their vendors. That's one that they don't really understand, and give them some tools. And then as a result of that, we will lay out a specific set of recommendations to them. Here's what you need to do to fix them. And they are free to use whatever services they want. We can provide all of this. I work with a firm that is a SOC 2, the highest certified cybersecurity firm that specializes in insurance and in small business. This is what's something that is a little bit different. And we can provide that, but an agency is not under any obligation to use us. If they want to use somebody else that they have a relationship with and can do the job, which we'll get into, have at it. My biggest goal is to make sure that agencies are as protected as they need to be. And there are a couple of advantages to doing that. One is you reduce the probability of being attacked. You will be attacked. Most agencies have been attacked in one form or another. They just don't know it. But they're going to be better able to survive an attack, and they're going to be better able to explain the cyber risks to their clients. And one of the things that we've discovered is once they've done the assessment, they start to sell more cyber coverage. Why? Because now they understand it. And they can answer the questions that a policyholder say, why do I need this? And what do I need to do to fix it?
Okay. So in my experience, the average agency principal is less than fluent in tech, right? They're generally great salespeople, and that's how they ended up running an agency. The good ones also become good business managers, not just salespeople. But cyber is well beyond that. Uh,
Correct.
so uh, in 2025, is that significantly better, or are you finding that out of the 40,000 independent agencies out there, there's probably 37,000 that are not well prepared?
Two-part answer, Tony. One is, yes, it is getting better. They are much more aware of the cybercrime threat. But at the same time, they don't really understand what that means. How does that translate into what they do as an agency? How do they protect themselves? And a lot of them think they're better protected than they in fact are. And that's a function of AI, because as we've talked about, AI and cybercrime are joined at the hip. One feeds off the other. And just as agencies use AI to streamline their operations and to perform more menial tasks much more efficiently and quickly, the cyber criminals are using AI for exactly the same reason. They're able to launch more frequent and better designed and more effective attacks. And if you don't stay two steps ahead of them, you're going to be behind the eight ball. And we've seen that not just in direct attacks, but also attacks through vendors. DocuSign has been attacked, and there's a very elaborate scheme that they've developed so that an agency who uses DocuSign, many do, they're getting requests to take certain functions, and it's actually coming from DocuSign. They've been able to layer on their own. The cyber criminals been able to layer on their own ability to mimic DocuSign and actually take over an aspect of it. So it looks legitimate. So, and in an agency, when everybody's multitasking, it's easy to make a mistake. And that's why you always have to stay two steps ahead. And there are ways to do that. We can get into that.
Yeah. What is the assessment like? How long does it take? What is it like?
The assessment only takes a couple of weeks.
Okay.
We do a 30 to 40 minute discovery call at the beginning where we ask some basic questions. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to know what you're doing now to protect yourselves. What steps do you have in place? And if they have an IT partner that they use or somebody in-house, usually it's an outside source, we like to have them on the call as well so they can answer certain questions that the principal is not in a position to answer. What are you doing? We take that information, we collect some basic information, then we do a deep dive, not just of their network, all of their computers. We want to look for all kinds of administrative issues and presence of malware, presence of old passwords and old credit cards that they didn't know existed. We found virtually every agent we've done, we found that. They had no idea. And then we do a very long report and do a highlight call. It usually takes an hour and 15 minutes. Walk through exactly what we found and what they need to do to fix whatever it is we find. And then they get the report. And then at that point, they can walk away. So the process is very easy. It doesn't take much time for the agency principal. We're talking maybe an hour and a half of their time total. And it's a great investment.
Okay. And it also digs into the vendor side?
Yes. One of the things we do is we analyze the agreements, the data sharing agreements that an agency has signed or clicked on accept. When you buy something from a vendor, you have to click on their terms of service, which are all written to their advantage, not yours, not to the agencies. And we highlight the data sharing policies. So the agency knows, do you know what you have given your permission for them to do? Do you know the extent to which that agency or that vendor is really putting cybersecurity at the top of their to-do list. There are a lot of AI-powered tools out there. They're rushing to market. They want to take advantage of. Everybody's talking about, oh, we need to use AI for this or that or whatever. And these products are wanting to rush to market. Cybersecurity, in all too many cases, is an afterthought. They really haven't thought about it. And so one of the things we can get into the specifics of the security aspects, but agencies have to understand that when you use multiple agencies, including your agency management system, of course, and some of them have been hacked too, what you're doing is you're creating what in the technology sector calls an attack surface. All it means is that the more connecting points that you have in your agency with outside is an opportunity for a cybersecurity or cyber criminal to make an attack. It's like when you buy a house, your house, when you first buy it, it has what, 15, 20 windows, and it has 3 doors, maybe. But what happens when you add a wing to it? You've added 8 more windows. Well, that's 8 more opportunities for a cyber criminal or a burglar to crawl in. That's an attack surface. You think of it that way. And once they attack that, then they realize this is a risk that I have to mitigate in some way. So
it's so tricky because to have any chance of using modern tools for efficiency and effectiveness of growing my agency, the average agency probably has 10 different technology vendors or more.
correct.
Right? Between the signature, the AMS, the rater, right? There's so many pieces to it, and they all play with each other. How on earth am I supposed to? How can I make sure that they are all taking cybersecurity seriously?
Well, it's a big job. What we have done in the assessment is provided a lot of those tools and the questions that you need to ask your vendors. What are you doing to protect the data that I'm sharing with you? And to what extent am I granting you permission to use that data in some way that maybe I don't like? They all have privacy policies. One of the things we do is we lay out, here's the privacy policy that you've accepted. And most of them will say, yeah, we'll do the best we can to protect the data that you share with us. But they also, many of them, will articulate certain exceptions. And the most common ones are, when they are merged with another company, with another vendor, or they are sued in some way, they're going to have to, share some information. Those are legitimate. The one that I really have a problem with is when they say, we won't share except in cases that constitute what we consider to be legitimate business purposes. You could drive a truck through that loophole. That doesn't mean the vendor is doing something they shouldn't be. In most cases, they're not, but they have the permission to do it. And the agency has granted them that permission. That's a question that I would urge principals to ask their vendors. And if I'm uncomfortable with the answer, maybe the principal should start looking for another vendor to do the same job. Because there are vendors are starting to catch up to this, and they're starting to address it in a more direct way, which is a good thing. They're saying, look, we're not going to share your information in under any circumstances, except in very limited and defined circumstances, which are, laid out clearly. But a lot of them, there's a lot of wiggle room, and they are subject to the same kinds of cyber attacks that agencies are subject to. And one of the things that we also do, once you've taken an assessment, we'll keep you up to date on issues that we think are important. And one of which would be, hey, did you know that DocuSign was hacked and this is what has resulted of that? Or did you know that all of them are being recommended to use a password manager? Well, one of the password managers, one of the largest, LastPass, was hacked. Did you know that? We're trying to empower the agencies to really understand more in a deep way what their risks are, and then hopefully they will reach out to a cybersecurity professional that can help them mitigate all of those issues.
Okay. How expensive is it to fix all the holes?
It's not as expensive as people think. People think that I can't afford what the Fortune 500 or the Fortune 1000 companies, they have these massive programs, and I can't afford that. Well, that's true, but a cybersecurity program, there are some basic things that every agency should be doing. And a lot of them, more are doing them, but a lot of them are not doing it yet, that don't cost anything. Maybe a little time, but then all of them need to be align themselves with a cybersecurity professional. And that cost on a monthly basis is going to be, it's dependent on the size of the agency. The smaller the agency, you're going to pay a few $100s a month, and that grows from there. But it's a great investment. And the other thing that we have started to really articulate carefully with agents is, think of cybersecurity as a service. It's not a commodity. You can't just, and I get this, an agency principal will tell me, "Oh, we don't need that. We just had the most powerful firewall ever installed, so we're good." And my answer is, you're not even close to being good, because firewalls can be breached. Firewalls have been breached. Multi-factor authentication has been overcome. It can be done, and not. Obviously, you need multi-factor authentication. You need, I would argue, multiple firewalls to make it progressively harder for a cyber criminal to attack you and get in. But you also need to have a monitoring system, a 24/7 monitoring system, because cyber criminals don't work like the common burglar. The common burglar, they sit outside your house and they monitor when you get up in the morning, when you leave for work, or who's home and who's not, with the lights that come on and off. They case the joint, and then they decide that when you're not home, they're going to crawl in through a window, an unlocked window, or jimmy the lock on the door. They'll figure out a way to get in. And once they're in, they're going to be in and out fairly quickly. They don't want to get caught. So they're going to look for the jewelry case in the bedroom. They're going to look for the big screen TV. They're going to look for what they consider to be an expensive piece of art, whatever it is. And they're going to get out. Cyber criminals don't work that way. Cyber criminals do case the joint, and they may case the joint for months. And they will send out attacks to see what works and what doesn't work, and they'll get better at it as they go. But then they can get inside your system and start wandering around to see what's in there. What can they get access to? Can they use the agency as a conduit to a vendor? People will remember in my presentations, I always call back to probably the most well-known breach, which was way back in 2013 when Target was breached and exposed like 110 million records. The firewalls at Target were effective. How did they get in? They got in through a refrigeration contractor who was working in some of the locations. They found a back door. That's what cyber criminals do. They look for a back door, wherever that might present itself. And they may be in your system for months before they decide, okay, now we've got we've been in, we've been wandering around, we know where we're going to go, now we're going to strike. And unless you're monitoring in real time, you don't know that somebody's wandering around in your system that shouldn't be there, and be in a position to kick them out before they do anything dangerous. But B, you may not know that they have been in your system, and it's not unusual to discover that somebody announces a breach and saying, we discovered it 2 months ago. They'd been in for 3 months or 6 months or whatever, and all of a sudden we discovered that they took something from us 2 months ago. That's why you have to have 24/7 monitoring by an actual cybersecurity professional. It's called Managed Detection and Response, MDR. And that's becoming, in my view, the new MFA. The something that every agency is going to want at some point in the next 2 or 3 years. We already know that some cyber insurance carriers are offering discounts if you have MDR.
Okay, good.
So they understand the value of it. And that's the good side of being well protected. You're going to get better terms on your cyber coverage, fewer sublimits, better terms just generally. And the same would be true for a client, a policyholder. That's why it's important for an agent to be able to articulate what the cyber threats are and saying, hey, if you do certain things, I can get you a much better deal on that cyber policy. And you sell more coverage.
Okay. Any client stories?
There are a lot of client stories. Understandably, they don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're uncomfortable admitting that they got hacked, they got attacked in some way. But I've heard plenty of stories about it, and I can talk about a couple of them. One has to do with an agency that they actually had. They were working on their website. They were changing their migrating from their old website to a new website, and what ended up happening is the time that there was an interim, there was a window there, and cybercriminal was able to get in. They had already been targeted, and they got in and they were able to extract some information, and it was a mess to clean up. Another case involving a smaller agency. The agency principal actually was doing a lot of the things that they needed to do to keep themselves safe. And very, very articulate principal. And but one of their clients was contacted. They had just sold a cyber policy to a business, and the client had gotten a notice, ostensibly from the carrier, saying, "Okay, it's time to pay your insurance premium, and here are the details that you need to do, and click here," and it looked legitimate to the policyholder, and they paid it. After paying it, the policyholder thought, "Did I do the right thing?" And decided to call the agency and said, "I just got a contact from what I thought was the carrier, and I paid this, and and they said, send us what you received. Give me a copy of what you received." Once they saw it, they realized it was fake. And the upshot was that the agency stepped in and started negotiating with the carrier and was able to mitigate some of the damage. But bottom line is, the policyholder ended up paying for his cyber insurance policy twice, to the tune of $50,000 or something. Another instance, and this is very common now. A policyholder thought they had full coverage. They had $1 million aggregate policy, and they were the victim of fraud. And what they didn't realize, and what the agent didn't articulate as effectively as they could have or should have, you had a $50,000 sublimit on fraud. So the client thought they had coverage to cover $110,000. In fact, they had 50. So they were out $60,000 and no recourse. One last one, which I think has gotten a little bit of play recently, and that has to do with carriers are getting more explicit on what they want or what they require either an agency or a policyholder to have in place before issuing a quote or binding a policy. And one of the questions, the standard question is, do you have MFA? And in this particular case, the agency said, yeah, I do have MFA. And ultimately they were breached and they had to file a claim. And the carrier came back, and this was Travelers, and it's been well publicized. The carrier came back and said, we discovered that you did have MFA over here on some of your equipment, but you didn't have it over here.
So no coverage. Hmm.
And they denied claim. They denied the claim, and it was upheld in court. I mean, in effect, what they were saying is, you lied. You said you had MFA.
Mm-hmm.
It was only a partial yes. So it's important that, the old adage, the devil's in the details. And that's why it's so important for agencies to really understand the risks that they face and the risks that their clients face, and then be able to lay out, here's how you fix those risks and how we can help you get the best coverage available at the lowest cost.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today. When this goes live, I'll tag both you and the company on LinkedIn. What conferences are you can the listeners see you at this year?
Well, I just did the Big I of Michigan. We did a 2-hour workshop there. I will be in Florida. at the Florida, the FAI convention last year, I actually did two-hour workshops to standing room only. I'm not going to be at as a speaker this year because they don't want to have the same guys come back, but I will be there as an exhibitor, and I'll be at in Texas. I'm planning to be in California, and I've got 4 or 5 others. I did about 20 shows last year,
Fantastic.
and some of them are just now figuring out what they want to do. A lot of the shows are coming in the fall, and they're just going through the process now. But I'm going to be in North Dakota. I'm going to be, I've lost count. I'm doing a lot of shows, and I'm actually working with carriers now. They are using me to go out to company retreats and talk more on in an informal basis. How can we help our agents do a better job? How can we make sense of this AI cyber crime environment that we're all living in? And I've been fortunate to be able to reduce, take the technology out of it completely. You need the technological expert, but I can explain it in simple English so a principal can understand it. And I'm doing a lot of work with the young agents councils too, which is really
Fantastic.
fun because they ask better questions. They get it. Yeah, I'm going to be the Sales and Leadership Conference in Tampa. That's coming in May. It had to be rescheduled because we were going to be down there last September, and the day of the conference was actually the day that one of those hurricanes hit Tampa. Obviously, they didn't have the conference. So they've rescheduled it for May, but I'll be down there for that one.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you, Tony.